My entire world collapsed on an ordinary Thursday afternoon when I walked into a neighborhood credit union expecting to close an old savings account that I believed had been empty for years. But instead the financial advisor stared at the screen with a frightened expression that instantly made my heart race. Before I could even ask what was wrong, she quietly told me that the account belonged to me and held more than $50 million, a number so unbelievable that I thought there had to be a terrible mistake. My name is Evelyn Parker, and I was 56 years old when that impossible discovery forced me to question every memory I had about my marriage, my family, and the man I had loved for nearly 3 decades. Until that moment, I considered myself an ordinary retired office coordinator from the peaceful town of Franklin Ridge in Oregon, where my days were filled with gardening, helping neighbors, and enjoying a quiet life that never attracted attention. My husband, Daniel, had passed away almost 2 years earlier after suffering a sudden heart condition that no doctor had expected, leaving behind a silence that echoed through every room of our small home. We had spent 28 wonderful years together, sharing simple dreams, raising our only son Mason, celebrating birthdays with homemade dinners, and believing that honesty was the strongest foundation of any marriage. So I never imagined he had been carrying a secret large enough to change everything after he was gone. Life after losing Daniel became a routine of quiet survival because grief settled over me like a heavy winter fog that refused to lift, making even the smallest household chores feel exhausting and strangely meaningless. I slowly organized his belongings, answered sympathy calls that became less frequent with each passing month, and convinced myself that accepting the loneliness was the only way to keep moving forward, even though every corner of the house reminded me of the life we had built together. Nearly 8 months after the funeral, I finally gathered enough courage to clean the study that Daniel had always treated as his private workspace, expecting to find nothing more than old notebooks, faded receipts, and forgotten family photographs stored inside dusty drawers. Instead, hidden beneath a stack of maintenance manuals inside a locked cabinet, I discovered a small envelope with my full name carefully written across the front in his unmistakable handwriting, and the moment I held it in my trembling hands, I felt a strange certainty that whatever waited inside was about to change the rest of my life forever. The envelope contained a single handwritten note instead of the heartfelt letter I expected, and the short message instructed me to visit Riverstone Community Credit Union with an account number that meant absolutely nothing to me because I had never opened any account there. Daniel had added one final sentence asking me to trust no one until I understood the truth, and those words echoed through my mind for weeks because they sounded more like a warning than a loving farewell. I tried convincing myself that the note referred to an old investment or a forgotten retirement fund, yet my curiosity refused to disappear as every quiet evening ended with me staring at that folded paper across the kitchen table. Finally, after almost a month of restless nights, I drove to the credit union expecting a simple explanation, but the young employee helping me suddenly became silent before disappearing into a private office without saying a single word. A few minutes later, the branch director introduced herself with an unusually serious expression and invited me into a conference room where she carefully turned her computer screen toward me. Before speaking another sentence, the balance displayed beside my name showed more than $54 million that had accumulated through thousands of carefully scheduled deposits over nearly 2 decades, and I felt every thought inside my mind disappear as complete disbelief took control of me. The director patiently explained that the account had always been legally registered under my name and that every document on file carried my verified signature, although I had absolutely no memory of signing any of them or even visiting that office before. She also revealed that the deposits had arrived from several different financial institutions following an organized pattern that suggested someone had planned everything with extraordinary precision instead of making random transfers over the years. I drove home through pouring rain without turning on the radio because the silence inside the car matched the confusion filling my heart, and I kept asking myself how my husband had hidden something so enormous while we lived such an ordinary life together. The moment I walked through my front door, I returned to his study with a determination I had never felt before, because I finally understood that the small envelope had only opened the first page of a much larger story waiting to be uncovered. Afternoon of searching through every shelf, drawer, and storage box in Daniel's study, until I noticed a weathered toolbox tucked behind several dusty paint cans that had never seemed important before, hidden beneath a false wooden panel inside the box was a thick sealed package labeled "Open only if you discover the account." And my pulse quickened because I realized my husband had expected this exact moment years before it happened. Inside the package was a detailed journal, filled with carefully organized dates, financial records, handwritten explanations, and copies of documents that revealed a completely different side of the man I thought I had known for almost 30 years. Daniel explained that his longtime business associate, Victor Lawson, had secretly stolen company profits through fake contracts, inflated invoices, and several hidden corporations, forcing him to quietly gather evidence while protecting the family from the dangerous situation. The journal described how Daniel had spent years transferring legitimate earnings into the protected account under my name because he believed Victor constantly monitored every company asset connected to him personally. He admitted that keeping such an enormous secret had been the hardest decision of his life, but he believed that if anything happened to him before exposing the truth, I would eventually discover the account and finally understand why he had remained silent for so many years. At the end of the journal, Daniel instructed me to contact an attorney named Benjamin Carter and mention the phrase Cedar Project because those two words would prove that I possessed the complete evidence package instead of only fragments of the story. He warned me never to discuss the documents with Victor or anyone connected to the company because he feared that desperate people often made reckless decisions when they realized their secrets were about to collapse. I sat alone on the floor of the study until darkness filled the room, reading every page several times while grief slowly transformed into determination because the husband I had mourned had spent years fighting a hidden battle without asking for recognition or sympathy. By the time I carefully placed the journal back inside the package, I knew my next step would decide not only my own future but also whether Daniel's final promise to protect our family would truly be fulfilled. The next morning when I arrived at the downtown office of attorney Benjamin Carter, a calm and experienced legal expert whose receptionist immediately changed her expression after I quietly mentioned the phrase Cedar Project exactly as Daniel had written it. Within minutes, Benjamin personally welcomed me into his office, unlocked a secure cabinet, and placed a sealed archive box on the conference table, explaining that my husband had delivered it years earlier with strict instructions that it could only be opened if I came asking for it by name. The archive contained duplicate financial records, confidential correspondence, banking summaries, and a detailed timeline proving that Daniel had spent years documenting every suspicious transaction connected to Victor Lawson. Without alerting anyone inside the company, Benjamin explained that Daniel had intended to present everything to federal investigators once enough evidence existed to guarantee a successful prosecution, but he wanted to ensure I would remain financially secure even if powerful people tried to destroy his reputation afterward. Over the following week, Benjamin introduced me to forensic accountant Dr. Melissa Grant, whose remarkable attention to detail uncovered an even larger fraud than Daniel had originally suspected. After examining thousands of financial records and electronic transactions, her final report concluded that Victor had secretly diverted millions of dollars through fake consulting firms and hidden investment accounts, while Daniel had quietly preserved legitimate company profits by transferring them into the protected account created under my name many years before the partnership began. As Benjamin prepared both civil and criminal legal actions, Victor unexpectedly began contacting me with unusual kindness that felt completely artificial compared with the confidence he had always displayed during my husband's lifetime. His friendly phone calls quickly turned into repeated invitations for lunch and vague conversations about unfinished company paperwork, convincing me that he somehow sensed the truth was beginning to surface even though he still had no idea how much evidence Daniel had left behind. Everything changed on a quiet Friday afternoon when the lawsuits were officially filed and investigators received the complete evidence package, because only hours later Victor called me in a panic after learning about the legal action from his own attorney. His voice was filled with anger and desperation as he accused me of destroying his life with false accusations. Yet for the first time since Daniel's death I remained completely calm, because I finally understood that the fear now belonged to the man who had spent years believing nobody would ever uncover the truth. The following week, federal investigators and financial crime specialists executed search warrants on Victor Lawson's offices, private warehouse, and several companies connected to his business network, uncovering years of hidden records that matched Daniel's handwritten notes almost perfectly. Every new document confirmed that my husband had recorded the truth with incredible precision, and the investigators later told me that the evidence I delivered had saved them months of work while exposing a financial scheme that had remained invisible for many years. As the investigation continued, several former employees came forward with stories they had been too frightened to share before, explaining that they had noticed suspicious payments and unusual contracts but feared losing their careers if they questioned Victor's authority. Hearing those people finally speak without fear reminded me that dishonesty rarely hurts only one victim, because countless honest lives had been affected by one man's greed and willingness to betray everyone who trusted him. Months later, the courtroom became the place where every hidden secret finally faced the light, and the mountain of financial records, expert testimony, and documented transactions left very little room for excuses or misleading explanations. Victor was held responsible for years of fraud and financial misconduct, while the legitimate assets Daniel had protected remained safely under my ownership exactly as he had planned, proving that patience, preparation, and integrity had defeated deception in the end. After the legal battle was over, I chose not to let the unexpected fortune change my character or erase the simple values that had shaped my life for decades, because Daniel had never protected that money so I could chase luxury or impress strangers. Instead, I established scholarships for hardworking students, supported local hospitals, funded community libraries, and created assistance programs for families struggling through difficult times, believing that real wealth becomes meaningful only when it improves the lives of others. Looking back now, I understand that the greatest gift Daniel left behind was never the fortune hidden in my name, but the courage to stand for truth even when the cost seemed overwhelming. And every sunrise reminds me that honesty always leaves a stronger legacy than fear or greed. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.